Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. Alright, let's dive into this one, because this whole situation with Jalen Waddle and his name floating around in trade rumors, again, is starting to feel like deja vu. We're less than 2 weeks away from the 2025 NFL trade deadline, which means every sports outlet is cranking out lists, rumors, and wild trade scenarios to keep fans on their toes. And right in the middle of all this speculation, ESPN drops a list of the top 25 potential trade candidates. Guess who lands at number 2? Jalen Waddle. That's right. Number 2, right behind Cincinnati Bengals pass rusher Trey Hendrickson. But here's the twist that makes this whole thing kind of ridiculous. Even ESPN admits the Dolphins aren't planning to trade him. They literally wrote that the team does not plan to trade the player. So why is Waddle even on this list? Because other teams want him. That's it. That's the logic. Because other teams are drooling over the idea of stealing him from Miami, suddenly he's in play. It's like putting a Ferrari on a list of cars people wish they could buy when the owner has no intention of selling. Now, I get it. When a team's sitting at 1-6 like the Dolphins are right now, you expect the front office to start looking under every rock for ways to rebuild. But trading Jalen Waddle? That's just nonsense. This guy is 26 years old. He's one of the fastest and most dynamic receivers in the league, and he's locked into a contract that's actually team-friendly. You don't move on from a guy like that unless someone makes you an offer so insane that you can't say no. And that's not just me saying that. That's straight from Jeremy Fowler's ESPN report, which mentions that while interest is there, the Dolphins' no-trade stance is expected to hold firm. Unless, of course, some team loses its mind and throws the kind of offer Miami can't possibly refuse. Let's break this down, though, because it's worth understanding why keeping Waddle makes so much sense. First off, his cap hit in 2025 is just $8 million. $8 million for a player who's already proven he can put up 1,000-yard seasons and stretch defenses every single week. That's an absolute bargain in today's NFL economy. Even in 2026, that number only jumps to $11.7 million, still more than reasonable for a player of his caliber. The big numbers in the 30s don't kick in until 2027, and even then, his guarantees expire. That means the Dolphins have all the leverage. They can restructure, extend him, or even part ways if things somehow go south, and it wouldn't destroy their cap. And let's not forget, Waddle isn't just a player. He's part of the Dolphins' core identity. He's one of those foundational pieces you build around, not trade away. If this team really is headed for a major shakeup, whether it's a new general manager, a retooled coaching staff, or even a roster reset, they still need a nucleus to build around. Tyreek Hill won't be around forever, and having Waddle, who's still young, dynamic, and productive, gives them that bridge to the next era. He turns 27 next month, meaning his prime years are still ahead of him. Trading him now would be like burning your best asset just to say you're rebuilding. And honestly, that's where this trade chatter gets lazy. People see 1-6 record and assume the Dolphins are just going to have a fire sale. But not every bad team needs to gut itself completely. Rebuilding doesn't mean you get rid of every talented player you have. It means you identify the right players to keep, the ones who will still be difference makers when the team turns the corner again. That's Waddle. He's not a bloated veteran contract. He's not a declining star. He's not a locker room issue. He's a homegrown, high-upside receiver on a manageable deal. Now, of course, if some team calls and offers a king's ransom, something like multiple first-round picks, then sure, you take that call. But anything short of that would be malpractice. It would be the kind of move that sets a franchise back, not forward. You don't trade away young, productive stars unless you're absolutely forced to. The Houston Texans did it in 2019 with Laramie Tunsil, and sure, that deal netted them a boatload of picks. But how often does that kind of trade actually work out for both sides? Not often. Speaking of questionable trade logic, let's talk about the other side of ESPN's list, Jakobi Meyers. Now, Meyers being a trade candidate makes sense. The guy literally requested a trade before the season even started. But what raised eyebrows was seeing Miami listed as a potential landing spot. The Dolphins? Trading for a veteran wide receiver right now? That's even more nonsensical than trading away Waddle. Why would a team that's clearly heading into a rebuild give up draft capital for a veteran who's about to hit free agency next offseason? It just doesn't add up. You don't spend resources on a short-term piece when your long-term picture is cloudy at best. That would be like repainting your car while the engine's on fire. At this point, Miami's priorities should be crystal clear. Accumulate draft capital, shed bad contracts, and identify which players are worth keeping for the next phase. WADDLE checks every one of those boxes for players worth keeping. He's young, affordable, and still improving. Trading him would accomplish the exact opposite of what a smart rebuild requires. Now, if we shift gears to the defensive side of things, that's where the trade speculation actually makes a little more sense. Jaelan Phillips being mentioned as a possible trade piece at number 8 on that ESPN list? That's fair. Phillips is an interesting case because, unlike WADDLE, his future with the team is murkier. He's on his 5th-year option, which means he's heading toward free agency next offseason. And given his injury history, it's not guaranteed that Miami wants to commit to him long-term. He's a talented pass rusher, probably their most efficient one in terms of generating pressure. But the durability questions make him a risky investment. The Dolphins also have Bradley Chubb and Matthew Judon, 2 other big-name edge defenders who could draw trade interest. But when you compare their age, contracts, and recent production, Phillips probably has the most trade value of the 3. He's younger, healthier right now, and on a cheaper deal. That's why it makes sense for Miami to at least listen to offers on him. Trading Phillips could bring back a solid draft pick or 2, and that's the kind of move a rebuilding team can justify. But again, that logic doesn't carry over to WADDLE. You don't move foundational offensive players who still have multiple prime years left. Let's be real. Part of the reason WADDLE's name keeps popping up is because he's attractive. Every general manager in the league would love to have a player like him. Explosive speed, great hands, reliable production, and he's still under contract for 2 more years at a reasonable rate. It's natural for teams to call and check in. But just because the phone's ringing doesn't mean you have to pick it up. There's a difference between teams are interested and a trade is likely. Right now, WADDLE falls squarely in that first category. So when you see these headlines, could Jalen Waddle be on the move? Or teams monitoring the Waddle situation? Take them for what they are, content filler. It's speculation season. It's the time of year when every rumor turns into a headline and every whisper becomes breaking news. But if you're really reading between the lines, even the insiders are saying the same thing. Miami isn't trading him. They'd be crazy to. The Dolphins might be struggling. And yes, major changes are probably coming. Maybe a new front office. Maybe even a new quarterback next year. But when that reset button gets hit, they're going to need building blocks. Players to rally around. Players who represent what they want to become again. Waddle fits that role perfectly. He's not the problem. He's part of the solution. You don't rebuild by tearing down your foundation. You rebuild by reinforcing it. And for all the talk about baseless rumors, head coach Mike McDaniel actually said it best last week. He called all this trade chatter baseless, and he's absolutely right. There's no fire here. Just smoke created by the never-ending content cycle that fuels NFL gossip every October. Unless something shocking happens, something that nobody in the league sees coming. Expect Jalen Waddle to stay right where he belongs, in aqua and orange, catching passes, dancing in the end zone, and reminding everyone why the idea of trading him was always just noise. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Fins this week? Alright, let's talk about what's happening down in Miami, because things are starting to get a little bit too hot behind the scenes, and I'm not talking about the Florida weather. There's this growing buzz, this wave of whispers coming out of the Dolphins locker room that something went down, something big, between Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Yeah, you heard that right. The 2-star wide receivers, the so-called dynamic duo that's been terrorizing defenses since Hill landed in Miami, apparently had a confrontation during a team meeting. Now, people close to the situation aren't saying exactly what caused it, but the word being passed around is that things got tense, voices were raised, and let's just say, it wasn't your normal, brotherly disagreement. This feels deeper, heavier, like the kind of friction that can shift the whole vibe of a team that's supposed to be chasing a Super Bowl. The thing about Tyreek Hill is, he's never been the quiet type. He's loud, passionate, confident, and that's part of what makes him great. When he's on the field, he's electric. He changes games. But that same energy that fuels his greatness can sometimes light fires in places you don't want them. WADDLE, on the other hand, is a different kind of personality. He's got swagger, for sure, but he's more contained, more about doing his thing and letting the play do the talking. When two strong personalities like that collide, especially when both are fighting for targets, for recognition, for leadership, sparks are bound to fly. And apparently, during this meeting, those sparks turned into something close to flames. According to people who claim to know, it all started with a discussion about accountability, the kind of talk teams have when they're coming off a tough stretch, trying to figure out what's going wrong. The Dolphins, as talented as they are, have been struggling to maintain that same explosive consistency that made them one of the most dangerous offenses in football. Some say Hill spoke up, maybe a little too bluntly, about players not giving their all, about focus, about preparation. And that's when WADDLE reportedly pushed back. The tone shifted, words were exchanged, and suddenly it wasn't about football anymore. It was personal. Teammates tried to step in, coaches tried to calm things down, but the tension in the room was already thick. The kind of thick that doesn't just disappear overnight. Now, for fans, this hits differently, because Hill and WADDLE have been marketed as brothers, the cheetah and penguin duo, the guys who dance after touchdowns, who finish each other's sentences in interviews, who seem like they're having the time of their lives. And maybe that was true. But the NFL is a business, and locker rooms aren't sitcom sets. When the stakes are this high, when egos, stats, and millions of dollars are involved, relationships get tested. You can be best friends one week and rivals the next if you feel like your role's being disrespected or your contribution undervalued. And for WADDLE, who's been trying to assert himself more in the offense, seeing Hill get the lion's share of attention from the media, the coaches, and even Tua, might be hitting differently this season. The Dolphins coaching staff, from what's being said, is trying to downplay the whole thing. They're calling it competitive emotion, saying it's part of the culture, part of what makes good teams great. But anyone who's been around this league long enough knows that's often code for, we're trying to keep this from blowing up. And that's exactly what they have to do, because the last thing Miami needs right now is division in the locker room. The AFC is a battlefield, and every team gunning for the playoffs is ruthless. You can't afford to have your top weapons distracted by personal conflicts. What makes this even juicier is that Hill, earlier this season, made comments that didn't exactly sit well with everyone. He's been very vocal about wanting to break records, about wanting to be remembered as the best ever, about chasing stats that no one else has touched. It's part of his DNA. He's a competitor. But when a player starts talking like that, it can rub teammates the wrong way, especially if they feel like the focus is shifting from winning games to personal glory. WADDLE's never been the type to chase numbers. He's about rhythm, chemistry, and team flow. So when those philosophies collide, especially under pressure, the result is exactly what we're hearing now, frustration boiling over. Sources close to the team have hinted that this wasn't the first time there's been friction. Apparently, there have been little moments here and there during practices, side-eye glances, subtle disagreements on route adjustments, even a few sideline exchanges that cameras might have missed. Small things, nothing catastrophic. But these moments build up, stack like dominoes, and eventually one falls too many. When it finally happens in a closed-door team meeting, it means it's been simmering for a while. And that's when coaches start to worry, because you can't just fix chemistry with a pep talk. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Some people are saying that this whole confrontation might have actually been sparked by something deeper than football. Apparently, there were some off-field remarks, maybe even jokes, that went a little too far. When you mix humor, pride, and stress, things can get personal really fast. And once pride's involved, apologies don't come easy. The Dolphins' PR team, of course, is keeping everything tight-lipped. No official statements, no press leaks, nothing concrete. But that's what makes this rumor so powerful. It's all whispers, all speculation, but it feels real. It feels like the kind of thing that doesn't just come out of nowhere. Fans on social media have already started choosing sides. Some are defending Hill, saying he's the emotional leader, the guy who holds everyone accountable. Others are backing WADDLE, claiming he's the one trying to keep the team grounded, focused on unity. And honestly, both sides have a point. Leadership styles clash. Personalities clash. But when that happens between two of your biggest stars, It puts everyone else in an awkward spot, especially the quarterback. You can bet Tua Tagovailoa is feeling that pressure, too. He's got to distribute the ball fairly, keep both guys happy, and somehow not let it affect the game plan. Easier said than done when one of them might be giving you the cold shoulder in the huddle. And let's not ignore how this kind of situation can ripple through a locker room. Younger players start picking up on the vibe. They start whispering, speculating, wondering who's really running the show. Coaches have to step in more, maybe make changes to rotations, or even meeting structures to avoid certain tensions. It can sound small, but it's not. This is how teams lose their edge, not because of injuries or playbooks, but because of energy. The Dolphins, for all their speed and explosiveness, have always been about rhythm. When that rhythm gets disrupted, when one note is off, the whole song changes. But here's the twist. Some insiders believe this blow-up might actually end up helping the Dolphins. Sometimes, teams need that kind of emotional eruption to clear the air. Sometimes, you've got to let everything out before you can move forward. If handled right, this could turn into a rallying point. A look, we fought, we made up, now let's go win kind of moment. That's the optimistic take. The one fans are clinging to. Because no one wants to imagine this season derailing because two of the most talented wideouts in the league couldn't get on the same page. Still, the damage control has already started. Reporters have been told to avoid locker room tension questions. Hill posted a cryptic tweet, something about real ones know what's up. That didn't help calm things down. WADDLE, meanwhile, has gone quiet on social media. And when guys who usually love the spotlight suddenly go dark, it's rarely a coincidence. Maybe they're cooling off. Maybe they've been told to stay silent. Or maybe they just don't want to add more fuel to a fire that's already burning bright enough. The Dolphins front office is reportedly keeping a close eye on the situation, especially since Hill's been involved in a few off-field distractions this year. There's always that thin line between energy and disruption, and right now, Hill's walking it. WADDLE's trying to be the calmer presence, but even he's human. Everyone's saying the right things in public, but behind closed doors, the question is whether the trust has been shaken. Because once trust goes, it's hard to get it back, especially in a team built around chemistry and timing. So what happens next? That's the million-dollar question. If the Dolphins start winning again, all this noise disappears. Winning heals everything. But if they stumble, if frustration keeps building, this story's only going to get louder. The media will pick up on body language, missed high fives, sideline moments, and every little gesture will be magnified. That's how rumors evolve into reality. And this one, right now, feels like it's on the edge of doing just that. At the end of the day, nobody outside that locker room knows exactly what was said, but you can feel the tremor. It's there in the tone of post-game interviews, in the way Hill and WADDLE avoid each other's eyes when cameras are rolling, in the subtle tension that fans can sense even through the screen. The Dolphins were supposed to be this unstoppable, fun-loving powerhouse, and they still might be, but somewhere along the way, something cracked. And now everyone's watching, waiting to see if they can patch it up before it turns into a full-blown fracture. Because the truth is, this league doesn't wait for you to figure things out. Either you handle your business, or you implode under your own talent. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, two names that should be rewriting the record books together, now find themselves at the center of Miami's most talked-about locker room storm in years. Whether it's just a spark or the beginning of something bigger, one thing's for sure. The Dolphins season just got a whole lot more interesting. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.